not because I couldn't make up my mind, but that's because the way it came out. The title of my talk today is A Special Time. And as I thought about this topic, I noted that all month it hadn't been mentioned, and my conscience just wouldn't let it go by without reminding us of our African American brethren, as well as our spiritualists of that denomination, of that group of people, and what they have done for spiritualism. Most people have no idea of that which they laid as the foundation. And so I felt it important that we bring it on today. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, a central pioneer in the study of Black history, selected the second week in February as a time to celebrate the Negro history. It marked the birthday of two very important people, both in that movement as well as in spiritualism. One was Frederick Douglass, and the other was a man of Caucasian being, and he was very strongly concerned about the emancipation of the slaves, and that was Abraham Lincoln. And he too visited the spiritualist churches in Washington, D.C., and is known to have sat in seances in Washington, D.C., right in the White House. The founding of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People was formed in February of 1909. And then our president, Gerald Ford, selected that the month of February be celebrated as African American History Month, not just 2 weeks or 1 week. He felt it deserved more than that short period of time. And he said that it was a time for the struggles to freedom and leadership of our African American brethren should be made known. And we should give opportunity to be able to give them credit for the good works that they did. You may be wondering what all of that really has to do with spiritualism. Well, let me tell you in a very brief term, a lot. That when we look back at our history, I wish I could talk all day and tell you the whole story, because it is most interesting how things moved along and how we found that we had a group of people that were so dedicated to the movement. Should you have the desire, and you are a person that likes to read, I would suggest to you that you read any one of the 50 books, imagine that, 50 books, written by the brilliant man of mixed race, and that was Paschal Beverly Randolph. He is very well noted in that time frame for all of the works that he did. He was of mixed race, and he became interested in the occult. And in his study of the occult, he was led into spiritualism. You know, many people have been led into the movement of spiritualism through various organizations, not only religious organizations, but organizations that promoted morality and kindness and love and peace. And they soon found their way in their journey on this earth life into our movement. From the past, we know we are all on our own journey, and we are all seeking the right path for us. Paschal advertised in many of the spiritualist journals of the day, and during the Civil War, he was on the platform in many churches as a wonderful trance medium. And you know, we have really, in the whole movement throughout the history, the least thing that we have was trance mediums. And here we have Paschal showing his abilities to communicate with spirit. After the emancipation by Lincoln, he um, taught the illiterate people of that time to study and to become familiar with all that there was to know. And he also served on the most prestigious papers of the day, such as the Messenger of Light, the Journal of Progress, and the Spiritual Telegraph. Those are three that are down in history as one of the most important grouping of spiritualist newspapers. And so he was a great part of that. Unfortunately, Randall's life ended abruptly because he was murdered. And he was murdered because of jealousy. And we know in spiritualism that jealousy is a negative factor, a negative trait. And we teach that we must learn to put jealousy in the background and think more of oneness and unity. Randolph was also very close to Abe Lincoln, and when Lincoln's body was transported to Illinois after his assassination, Randolph rode on the train with his buddy Abe. His biography is another book, A 19th Century American Spiritualist, Rosicrucian, and Sex Magician, published by the State University of New York in 1977. Another familiar name, and I picked out the people that I felt were the most prominent. I'll tell you, we can go through the books of history and see all of the people that were in that movement in that time in the African American race. You just say, which one did more? Which one did more? And as I tried to figure it out, these are the people I selected. And one, of course, that has to be mentioned is Frederick Douglass. Amongst being an abolitionist, he was a dedicated spiritualist. And he was the first in history. In 1872, he ran for Vice President of the United States. And he was on the ticket with the first woman to run for president, Victoria Woodhull. His autobiography, there's three. I guess he couldn't get it all into one book. So he wrote his autobiography in segments. And there's The Narrative of Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, My Bondage and My Freedom, and The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass. And believe me, it's the most interesting reading. I started working on this lecture about 2 weeks ago, but I got into Frederick Douglass somehow and couldn't let go. And so I just kept going on page by page until finally I said, it'll be next February 2021 before I get this together if I don't stop reading. But it's most interesting. The popular woman of the African American history and spiritualism is known as Mother Leafy Anderson. And Mother Anderson founded the Eternal Life Christian Spiritualist Association. And she was quite popular and had quite a group going when she decided to move the whole organization to New Orleans. And at that time, there was 10 groups meeting in New Orleans. She had a total of congregation, as I said, of 10. And she was always interested in getting the movement firmly placed. And in that way, one of the things that she had to lean on was the Holy Bible. She denounced voodoo and popular magic, which many of the African Americans practiced at that time. She changed the word from spiritualist to spiritual because she felt it would attract more people if it was unity, spiritual, not one group. One of the students of hers was Marguerite Henry, and she founded the Universal Church of Chicago, and as the president, at that time they belonged to the NSA, and she had 2 ordained ministers, 2 national teachers, and 1 trumpet medium. Another thing that was not very popular because there was only a limited few that tried to practice trumpet. So that was important also. During Levy's lifetime, she founded many churches, but founding churches wasn't the most important thing to her. She cared about people, and she cared about people very deeply. Both of that was important to her because she felt that unless people felt wanted, unless people felt loved, they would fade away and go off in a different direction. And so she was very stern and strict about making sure that there was always peace and harmony around her and her organizations. She has gone down in history as one of the finest mediums of spiritualism. So you see the Black Brethren did play a very important part in our movement. It's unfortunate that in those days, some of the Caucasian spiritualists just didn't like those people of darker skins sitting near them. And so the churches became divided. However, I just want to inject before I go on, there is a gentleman that was in our time, the Reverend Billy Hammond, and he spoke in Lilydale, and that's the camp up north, and he wanted everyone to know about what Lilydale did during that time. And what they did that was so important was they assisted in the Underground Railroad. And if you're not familiar with history, the Underground Railroad was where they helped slaves escape into Canada so that they could be free. So the NSAC had many divisions that took place and various issues, and they didn't know what to do about it. And they struggled with race. That was one of the prime things. Instead of remembering to keep the spiritual first, they let race intervene. It was quickly recognized by the board of the NSA at that time that they must do something, and they must do something quickly. And so they decided that they needed to help the African Americans form their own association. And in 1925, the NSA sent its president, who was Joseph Whitwell, to Chicago to meet with the African Americans and help them set up a church. He met with all of the leaders of the group up there, and they formed the National Colored Spiritualist Association of Churches. At the first meeting, they elected their officers. A year later, they authored a constitution and bylaws that was similar to that of the NSA, and they accepted totally the Declaration of Principles. So they were now on a firm base, and they served in some form from that period of time into 1970. But once 1970 hits the pages, there's no record of the organization. There's nothing that says they went defunct. There's nothing that said they split up. There's nothing that said they were going forward. They just disappeared. Well, everyone questioned, what in the world has happened? What has taken place that this has just gone into oblivion? Well, what happened was the African Americans were seeping back into the NSA, and they were becoming one in unity again. And so that gave more strength to the whole organization. They incorporated the General Assembly in 1897, and it was reincorporated in 1914 as an ecclesiastic religious body. And the Lady of Love that stepped in was the Reverend Marion Newby. And anyone that hung around Lilydale knows of Reverend Newby. She was one of the sweetest ladies that there possibly could be. But what happened as time went on, after her serving for 40 years, she passed into spirit. And the General Assembly decided they must go on They must fulfill that which she has strived so hard to accomplish during her earth life. And they appointed another beautiful African-American lady, Aloma Carson. And she is still very active in Lilydale today. She's a lovely lady. She has well put together thoughts. And above that, she has also gone ahead and organized the Divine Church of Inspiration in Rochester, New York. And it's multiracial, but primarily African American. She is an orator and known well as one of the top of the line of authentic mediums. And I can tell you that Lilydale has a Sunday service at 4 o'clock. That's an all-message service for an hour. And that lady can go through that hall, and I mean, she can just hit one right after the other, and you see faces just light up waiting for her to come because they know that she's going to give them the right, truthful, honest message. But now what happens? We're in our 20th year of the age of Aquarius, the predicted era of change, and change is still taking place. We feel it every day. Spirituality is becoming strengthened as it said it would. The age of Aquarius, as it moves forward, will be becoming more spiritual. Our thinking will be more of oneness, and will be more going into enlightenment. And then one other person I'd like to mention that I know you all have heard of, and that's Martin Luther King. And you know, he's the one who had a dream. And in just short terms, his dream was unity and oneness. And so, you know, as I think of Black History Month, I could see Martin Luther King in two ways. I can remember the one scene of him with the tears coming down his cheeks. And I can see him with those tears glowing on his darkened skin, and his deep caring and his deep love for humanity showing forth. There was also joy. There was the times of gladness when he saw the progress, but he was always sad when he saw a setback. Can you envision the joy that must have been in his eyes as he witnessed from the other side of life an African American become President of the United States? I can just see that smile on his face. And that was one thing he said: a person should be labeled by their character and not by the color of their skin. And that's something we need to remember as we go forth in life. We know nothing can stop progress. And as spiritualists, we know by meditating and thinking positive thoughts, we can bring about change. We can bring about good change. And that's what it's about, because change continues to move. It is not something that sits still. It is always taking place in some form. Yes, here we are in this 21st century, and we're feeling today the waves of turmoil and the cleansing of our time. But all this will soon pass as more and more that vibration of spirituality steps forward. Today, we are writing another era of history of where we are going as a people, as one people. And you know, today we just don't think of the African Americans and the Caucasians coming together, but we have the Spanish and we have the Chinese, and just like our Statue of Liberty stands in that harbor, welcoming anyone that wants to come to the United States of America. You know, understanding the natural law, the law of the great unseen, makes it easier for us to go through the turmoils and to grow from them and to learn and to find that there is a way that all things can work together for good. You know, we can walk the walk, and that is good. But if we just talk the talk and forget the walk, we accomplish nothing. And that's not what we want to do. We can't fake it till we make it. We have to do it. We have to be a person of thought that considers everyone and that considers us all equal, all on our own journey at different levels, and so there is no right or wrong of where anyone is. Sooner or later, it is the law. We face the music. So no matter in what shape, form, or color, we are all one. Always remember, we are a spark of that divine, great spirit. Have thoughts and wonders and the gift of life. Have thoughts about how wonderful it is that we have our freedoms. You are in your rightful place at this special time. And I would like to conclude by reading a poem that was entitled I Dream a World, and it's by Langston Hughes. And who is he? He was one of the most important writers and thinkers of Harlem's Renaissance, which was the African-American artistic movement in the 1920s, the celebration of black life and its color. Hughes created genius was influenced by his life in New York's Harlem, a primary African-American neighborhood. In his words, I share the poem. I dream a world where man no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its path adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man be free. Where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy like a pearl attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream a world.